Today I'm going to be doing a sketch of the Charles Bridge. I've done this one before. This is a slightly different scene from another angle, and I do want to give it another go. So let's go ahead and pick out a few pens. Now before I'd actually used a bunch of rollerball ink pens, and this time I'm going to be using some pigment liners, and also we'll be using some of these flat pigment liners as well, so they just have a flat head rather than a rounder sort of head. So this is going to be an interesting one to try out. So I'm going to go ahead and get myself out the 0.8 to begin with. There's going to be a few changes here. We're actually going to have to probably add in some figures near the foreground. And what we want to do for this one is firstly just mark out the area where the buildings at the back roughly finish. Now, can safely say that it's not a third of the way up, but it's almost a third of the way up the page. So I can estimate and draw a line roughly about here. So third of the way up would be roughly here. So we're just leaving a bit more room because we want those buildings to just have enough room on top. So remember, this can be changed later as well. If you don't get it in 100%, that's not a big deal. So another thing we want to try to do is start getting in the bridge. Now the bridge, it's probably one of the most obvious parts of this scene. So it comes in all the way from here, starts about here, okay, just about where the buildings start, okay, coming down the front, and then that sort of connects up like that. And then this comes back as well, roughly around here, connects up with this side of the bridge, something like that. There are a few little artifacts actually in the wall, so especially around here, it kind of goes in a teeny bit more, so it's sort of, you can see a dip in there, and then it juts out a little bit like that, but it's not too obvious. You can barely sort of tell. I'm just going to indicate something like that in here, and then later on down the track I'll probably decide exactly what to do. So over on this side, we're going to get in the other part of the bridge. But before we do, I just want to play around and get in some figures. Now this side we will put in a figure, maybe just walking into the front of the scene like this. Okay, just like a t-shirt or something here, and maybe the other arm just around here, like that, there, and we can put in a leg like this there, and then a leg here next to the other one. We can get in a few more over here as well, just some quick sort of figures. These might be just a group of people kind of walking over, or they could be walking into the back, or for example these two might be talking, for instance. So just keeping them pretty loose for now, and I might add in another one behind here for this figure in the foreground as well. Now I do wish I'd put this one a bit further in a little bit earlier, but that's okay. We can just kind of wing it, put this larger figure in kind of further in the front of the scene like this, and we can get that figure kind of perhaps walking kind of out of the scene. Let's just have a look. I have one leg there, the other leg coming down like that. It's a bit ambiguous as to which way this figure is actually walking, but that's okay. I'm just going to put in a little bit of this, tiny little bit of this wall, the top of the wall like this as well. Okay, just something quick to outline roughly where it is. You will notice as well there is a statue here. All the details at the front need to be drawn in first. It's just a lot easier to do it this way rather than wait later and then have to go over the top of everything again. So I'm really just estimating this and simplifying down the shapes as well. You can see in the statue it's actually a lot more complicated than this, but we can certainly simplify it down. We know the head of the figures, but the statue ends up around there. So, you know, of course, we just need to leave a teeny bit of room there on top so that we can get in that figure. Now, again, I'm just going to keep this pretty basic. I think it's a mother kind of holding a child or something like that. It's not, it's kind of hard to see, and I'm just trying to get in the figure. There is another figure actually here, I think, yeah. Interesting. So it's kind of just standing all together in one large sort of clump, like that here. Okay, so that's a really sort of basic statue, and it's definitely not anything too special, but it does the trick. It certainly does the trick. So I'm going to go in on that bit of wall, actually, just a bit darker, outline the details more. And it's okay to go darker around this section, especially because we've got a little bit more of this foreground showing. So when we start heading into the background, we just got to be a little bit more careful. But for the time being, we are quite okay. I might actually drop in another figure or someone here at the back, a couple more here. Just, you know, they help to add a bit of depth into the scene. Okay, even some small, really small figures in the background where you can barely see. I think that's a good one, good sort of trick to add depth in your scenes. So, you know, change up the figures as well, change their hair and things like that, which we can also do a little bit later. There's no need to sort of to do everything now, but this is a few ideas here. You know, you can put some hair on those ones, a bit of hair on this one here, and you know, if the hair's hitting the back of the head, it means that they're probably walking in that direction. Okay, so here's a little bit of hair, something like that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is get the other side of the bridge in, and we know it kind of comes out around the same area, kind of hits this side here around the same height of that wall, but it does finish a sort of shorter section, so more kind of around here, I'd say, because we're looking in from another angle. So it's looking pretty decent. There is some kind of statue here as well, which I will indicate. It's hard to sort of see. Sometimes you need to actually zoom into a reference photo to figure out what exactly is going on and swap to another pen. That kind of thing may be helpful there. And remember, you know, statues are basically just figures. So we can just simplify that down, and there we go. We've got some kind of statue here. Okay, fantastic. Now, what we can do is start getting in also a bunch of these lamps. Now, we don't have to put them exactly, you know, where the scene had them, or the reference picture has put them. So, but I have put one over here. Though I do want to also add one in over on this side as well. So I'm just going to improvise and just draw one up like this. We'll copy the other side like that. Okay. Bit more detail there. Okay, a little bit more detail here. It's really just a bit of darkness up the top as well. There we go, and that's a lamp, just a really simplified kind of lamp. I mean, we can even go as far to put another one here as well. They're not actually this close together. However, you know, I've just decided I'll put one in here anyway. You know, it's closer down the front, so we can, of course, just add in a bit more detail like that. Scribble that in. It's just dark on the top with a bit of this section heading up into the sky. Another thing you can do is like hatch away a little bit at pole like this to help draw out that figure, not the figure, but help draw out the light a bit better so that we can see it. Fantastic. And of course, you know, I know there's not really one here, but you know, I thought it would be good to put one in. Since we've got one on that side, having some type of balance would be nice as well. So sometimes you can just change around the reference to whatever you feel suits, or whatever you kind of want to add in there to imply what's going on. I think this would be a nice little light source as well. So I quite like the positioning of that. I will put in a stronger base for it like this. Maybe hatch at the bottom of it a bit more. You will notice as well on the walls that we get these kind of marks on them, like this, these kind of, you know, directional marks in the walls, and then you can draw in, you know, little bricks like that that follow the directional, these little, basically the perspective of the wall. So that's a simple way to do it. And as we move down the back, always just keep in mind that the bricks get smaller and smaller, so don't draw them too big when you get up to this area. Just keep them pretty small. And you know, probably safest thing to do as well, if you've got a smaller pen, just draw them in with the smaller pen. So you can already see that kind of makes a difference. It makes this wall look a little bit more three-dimensional, gives it some extra detail that wasn't there before, extra definition, which we do require for stuff in the foreground. Okay, so we can balance it off and not have too much detail there in the background. We've got a little bit here to essentially go by, and you know, we'll do it on this side as well. Helps add to that depth, perception of depth in the scene, which is quite essential. Okay, we don't have to put all of them in as well. So, you know, you'll get to a point where you'll feel happy with what's in there and you can pretty much stop. Now on the ground, you've got almost the same sort of deal, and here's where you just got to be also pretty sparing in terms of you know, how you go in this section, because if you overdo it, I do find it can just be can turn into a little bit of a mess. So I'm going to leave that for now, just kind of like that, and I'm going to start working on the background and the buildings. Let's put in some buildings here. So this is that large tower here in the background. Let's make this quick and easy, hey? So there's the arch, just like that. It's just an arch. Okay, it's exaggerated, a little bit larger than it actually is. Excuse me. And we'll go up, and this is the bottom part. There's a kind of separated section here for the bottom part. Then it comes up again. There's a second section like that, with some type of opening there, feature, ornamental sort of feature there. You've got a third part up the top here, which is fairly complicated. I mean, look at this. We've got all these little kind of windows and vertical strips like this coming across there, and of course the top of the tower, which firstly I'll just straighten this up a little first. I think I've lost some just a little bit of that straightness on the edges, but you know, a bit up here like this. It's just a rectangle. Think of it as a rectangle on top. Then we're going to come down like that, like that. You know, there's a couple of these little spires that poke out the top there. There's actually another tower, part of the tower here as well, on that right hand side, which I'll just sketch in very quickly. Bring that down like that. Okay, fantastic. And you know, we've also got some other bits and pieces here, these little lamps which go further off into the background, into the distance. Let's draw in a house here that kind of cuts through the back, and then we've got another one, of course, which just cuts in front of this one almost and just runs across the scene here. Okay, so draw that top of that roof or whatever of the house, and then we've got some of these little windows and things here. So again, extra bits and pieces that you might or might not want to add in here. Okay, I might actually use another pen for this, the flat pen. So let's go ahead and get this other side in. Now we know we've got this statue. Now the easiest thing to do is just model the rest of it on the placement of the statue. So roughly about here, like that. It's a triangle for this feature of this house, like that. Oops, there. That sort of goes down like this. Okay, and really the house has just got windows, a bunch of windows like this all over the place. One here, there's one here, one here, there's one here, here, one here. There's a few more around the other sort of edges as well, down the bottom here as well. Fantastic. There's a bunch of other little buildings here in the background. This one's kind of shielded by a bunch of trees and things running around the back. I'm not going to try mess with that too much. Okay, and before I get this dome in, I'm just going to try to get in the side of this house. It's like a feature running down here. Okay, there we go. And I don't know exactly what's all in this area. I'm not too super fussed myself, but you know, for all I'm concerned with, all I'm concerned is that there's certainly just some buildings and things running through there. Simplify them down. Let's have a look. Now we do have this sort of triangular shaped building here. Which runs down. This kind of just runs down like that. There's another. Looks like a statue or something there as well. Simplify that down. You know, here there's like a window, there's a door, arch here at the bottom as well. Like that. What else do we have? We've got another sort of tower behind as well, like this. And another tower here. It just sort of runs through the back area. And of course, that sort of turns into another tower like that. Over the top here, you know, we've got a bit of this tower which I will simplify down a bit. Like this, we do have a few little of these windows, doors or whatever they are. Well, they're definitely windows, sort of openings. And then they kind of just come up like this into the top part. 2, 3. And top part of the dome, of course. There we have it. So we've got a fair bit in at the moment. You know, so really at this stage we've got the gist of everything. And I want to now use another pen, some of these black liners, to get in some more details. Just to finish it off before we actually end up painting. Cover these ones up first. Okay, we'll start with this bigger one. I want to darken some of this stuff up here in the foreground. So especially this part here, this part of the wall, like that. Maybe a bit underneath here as well. Leave a bit of light. Maybe some of the bricks we can colour in a bit as well. There, one here, like that. the bottom of the wall. I think that would be interesting, just to get in a slightly darker spot. Here I'm just going to darken in here to create a kind of maybe like a shadow being cast inside this hollow part of the wall there. Just again joining this up a bit, and we can colour in a few of these bricks, I mean not even completely, but just partially, a bit of detail in there. Okay, this tower is actually going to have a fair bit of light on it, so I'm not gonna really touch that all too much. We'll go in and I'm gonna just start outlining a few more areas. One thing I need to do is just get in a bit more of a thicker line for this pole here, this light pole, lamp. Okay, there we go. We might even think about putting some darkness onto the legs of this figure, like that. We can darken this figure's shirt there, the pants of this figure behind. It's just picking out a few things that you want to kind of change up in here, identify a little more, I suppose, for the figures. Again, you don't have to do this all now, you can leave it until later. I think it's probably a better idea if you're not 100% sure on how much to do. But yeah, what I do is that I kind of leave out the shirts on some areas. I leave them white, some of the figures, and then the others I'll just leave in dark. And doing it this way allows you to create small contrasts. I can also get in hair and things like that as well, over this side, for some of the figures. Okay, so that's already looking, this figure here at the front as well, just thought I'd put in a little hair for that. And, tiny bits of detail on the buildings. So, the windows are not actually this dark, of course, but perhaps this area here I can just exaggerate even further, and again just draw in a bit of darkness behind that gate, cutting around these figures here, just like this. Yep, just a more sort of darker look, and even in some of the windows. Okay, just a stylistic thing. I don't want it to look exactly like the reference, and I'm kind of just playing. I'm just trying out the new composition. If we add some darks here, is it going to look better, or is it going to look more interesting? I'm not sure sometimes, but it's always a good way to test out a new composition. So that's looking pretty good. I think I'll just swap over. Let's use this. I've got a smaller pigment liner, and this is great for getting in windows. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got a couple of windows here. Okay. Get in a few windows, change them up a bit. But look how quickly I'm doing these. Certainly not fussing about, am I? Even on some edges we can leave them more or less uncovered. There's even these little bits on the roof here. There, which I can draw in. Just bits that I'd missed out earlier with that pen. We can outline further and detail a bit more with this one. Okay. Just small bits and pieces, things in the background, anything that you feel would help to identify what's going on and draw attention to parts of the building. Now I do want to add in a teeny bit more detail here for this actual tower, so that's why I'm just fiddling a bit more in this section so that I can so that I can just add in some more stuff going on in here. Okay, good. There are also little bricks in here as well. It's hard to tell, but there's little bricks in there. So just putting a few in here and there is going to help to, just add in a bit more sharpness and detail there in the background. It's easy to get carried away and forget that it's just a background. However, the background does need to be detailed, sufficiently detailed enough so that we can tell where we are, what we are actually drawing. If we don't have enough in here, we're not going to be able to tell the context, the location, which is Prague. Look at that, just a little bit more for this, for that one there. I mean, you keep on going, and I love, sometimes I get into a bit of a trance when I'm doing this, and if you ever do, just go with it. Sometimes you gotta throw the plan away and just go with what comes along the way. And sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. But I think if you've got all the basic details of the scene, the context and some figures, the composition, the perspective, really can't go wrong. I'm going to get that light sort of shining on this statue as well. Little light shading in some areas. We don't want to do too much of this at this point though, just bits and pieces, just so that we can leave a bit more of it until later for the painting, of course. Some of this is good just for cutting around the figures. I love doing this to kind of cut around them. More figures, little figures here in the distance, of course. Just get smaller and smaller until you can barely see them. But the shadows I'm going to get just coming downwards in front of the figures. Okay, do we want to put anything else in? Probably a few of these little windows, like this would be nice. Again, this is so rough. They're not exactly anywhere near what we can see. I've just kind of guessed and changed them up, styled them a bit differently. Okay, there's a tree here, or a branch or something like that. Okay, fantastic. I think we will get started now on the painting. We want to go in with all the light colors, and I'm going to be using some, got some quinacridone burnt orange, which I'll put onto this part of the building, and also some lemon yellow. I'm using this almost straight from the palette. Okay, and fairly diluted down as well, okay, just to get in this warmth on the buildings, okay, especially the middle sections. Some of those sections here on the right, for example, that one is more of a, it's almost like a creamy yellow color, so I've added in some titanium white in there actually, so just a little bit of that titanium white to mellow that area down a bit, so it's not all that same color, and it sort of helps to shift the focus away from this other spot as well. So, you know, more areas of contrast, of saturation will be here. This also, maybe with a bit of this titanium white in it, this statue, because we are looking at this light here which is kind of shining onto it like that. So anything that you can find that you would basically, you know, find any sort of light sources, you know, areas like that, just color them in with a variety of yellows. You know, I tend to use 𝗪𝗙𝗔𝗦𝗧𝗘 yellow light, and then in the middle, of course, I've just put some 𝗠𝗘𝗥𝗡𝗧𝗏 and 𝗠𝗘𝗥𝗡𝗏 color in there. Down at the base, we can darken down a little bit around the top of the building. I might put in a little. Let me just drop in maybe a little purple up there to carry it downwards. But if I just add in a bit more yellow up the top as well, something like that, so it doesn't just begin all of a sudden. So I'm going a mixture of this kind of purpley sort of colour in there. Moving it onto this side, maybe a bit of red in here. Let's have a bit more of that creamy colour. Forgotten about that. It's slightly opaque as well. You can see it's just taken out that lamp. I've gone over it before. Okay, like that. A bit more of this at the side. That's kind of a bit of a greeny colour there. Fantastic. Let's get in some of this parts of the building, maybe some darker bits here at the top there, like this one. We just want to darken up there in some spots so that it kind of bleed through and create some contrasting areas in there. If we can get a bit to sort of come down the page as well, I think that would be nice. Yeah, just in the black spots, I'm going to let that kind of do its thing. Now some colours onto the ground as well would be good. I'm going to just reflect some of this stuff that's up there, this kind of golden 𝗠𝗘𝗥𝗡𝗧𝗏 colour for this part, and the rest of it's kind of like this yellowish, creamy sort of yellowish colour down on the edges like this. Okay, draw that down the page. Okay, I will drop some more colour in there, mind you. The wall, I will also drop in just some warm colour, just a light wash of some warmth in there. Just trying to get some of this to blend and mix together a bit as well, so then we don't have areas where it just drops out suddenly. That's too red, so I'm just putting in a bit of this white colour in the corner. It's basically buff titanium. Okay, now the sky, that needs to be done pretty quickly as well. I'm going to just wet some parts of it just quickly, so maybe here up the top like this, so I can get in some cloud-like effects. Let's put in some ultramarine and a bit of ultramarine and red in here. Okay, I do have some imperial purple as well, which we can use, and I'm hoping this will kind of granulate out a bit and form some interesting combinations. It actually looks pretty good, so I'll drop that in and let it sort of mix in and do its thing. Do feel free to leave some areas of the sky white near the buildings as well. Helps to get these incidental highlights, keeps things interesting. It lifts off the paper very easily, this the palette, I mean this purple that I've got. Okay, there. I'm just trying to do away with a lot of the light, and if I can do some cutting around as well, that would be nice. Okay, bit more in here. That. Bring that all the way down to the buildings at the back there. Fantastic. And great. Just having a look at where we might be able to find some connector bits. Just let it sort of meld into the buildings ever so slightly in some areas. Okay. Bit of water just added in there as well. In the ground, we're going to have to put in some of this paint there as well, just to create just a bit of shadow and darkness in the ground. So I'm just going to go sort of these downward reflections for some of the figures that kind of go through all the warm colours. Okay. That. A bit more blue in here actually. A bit more blue. The figures, I'll add in some colours. Bit of this light lavender colour for some of the figures here. Bit more warmth in some of them too, like that. Pick up some grey, bits of grey, and don't feel you have to colour them all, and we can leave some of them with the white sort of shirt like that. At the back too, that works nicely. I might just drop in a bit of red for the faces of some of these figures as well. Something like that. Okay. Fantastic. I think that looks pretty good. Apart from adding in a few little clouds, which is just basically purple that I'm dropping into the sky. And this is the purpose of this is just to get in more contrast in some areas, especially near this lamp. I do feel some of the colours we can emphasise, like the yellow, if we just add in a bit more darkness in the sky with this purple, and the granulating effect should be pretty obvious once everything is dried off as well. Okay, I don't want to do it everywhere. I think that should be good. Okay, leave this to dry and we'll get back to it. That granulation in the sky is looking quite nice. I actually like that. And the clouds, it's worked out very well. These softer, sort of darker clouds are running through. So what I'm going to do now is just pull everything together by using just a little bit of neutral tint. I've got some Payne's Grey, and we're just going to pull everything together by putting in all the darks. So normally what I will do is I will pick up a bit of either neutral tint or Payne's Grey and mix it up with some of the colours we've already used here. It's not 100% necessary, but you know, for example, the stems of these, areas here can be darkened off a little bit to exaggerate, bring them forwards a little. So these lamps, okay, so just a tiny bit more in areas. You can just, see the tops of these lamps as well do have a slightly more detail in them, and there's these little bits running down the lamps as well, which you can emphasize a bit more like that. Certainly just adds that little bit more character and depth into the painting. Okay, oops, that one's a little bit too thick. I've gone down, but that's alright. Still in the same style as everything else. Okay, now this statue could do with a little tiny bit of darkness, maybe in that back area, like that. Just indicating that the lamp is in front there, like that. And below, I'm going to grab neutral tint, dark enough below, and here just running through that figure as well, further darkening off some areas. Okay. And again, we're going to bring some of this down into the ground, so like downward brush strokes, like this. Okay, looking good. Having a look at what else we could do. Some extra dark bits. I think for this gate here at the back, some definition there would be good. That. Extra definition in areas of the gate and some parts of the walls. The top as well in here. These spots are a tad darker. And there's this little shadow, the slightest shadow, just running down the left side of the building, like that, there. Rooftops of these buildings on the right are a little bit darker. I'm just getting more of a sharper edge to these rooftops as well, like that. This building is actually a lot darker down the bottom. It's just soften that up a little. There's even some trees here, which I could just, put in a bit of gouache or something like that in here. There. Okay. Darkness here at the base of this gate. There. So look, a bit of shadow running down the sides of these buildings. The buildings in the background are very hard to see anyway, so there's not much we need to do with them. If you want, you can just darken them off very slightly, like what I'm doing here. Okay. Let's have a look. Oops. Just lift this up a bit. Bit of that darkness under the roof, bit here, a tiny bit maybe running across that left side of the dome to indicate maybe the light source coming from that right hand side area there. I can just exaggerate that shadow more by putting in a sharp shadow like this, running halfway through the building there, and again we can kind of do it for this side of this building like that. Oops. Preserving some of the yellows in there too. You don't want it too sharp, just dab off a little section of it like that, and then it will kind of blend in to the building part way through there. Okay. bit more of that on the back there, that part of the building, darken down at the back areas there. Not too dark, but still a little darker than the actual statue itself. Just a bit of green back there, like that. Some ultramarine, like that. Okay, good. Bit more colour in these sections. There are some trees or that sort of thing running through just in front, but they're very subtle, like that. Good. Okay, this wall needs to be darkened down significantly. So just using a bit of this ultramarine mixed with neutral tint, and to get in some little bits and pieces here, these lights for example. The figures will need to pick up a little bit more neutral tint, mix that in with a bit of this neutral tint plus ultramarine, and I'm just going to get in some little shadows, reflections or what have you, running forwards. Okay, like this. Connect it up with the legs. A little bit more. That's too dark there, but areas marking out the tops of some of these towers and buildings, they do have like spires and little bits, tips going up into the sky, so I do like to just put in a bit on some of those buildings like that. Maybe too late in the evening for birds, but sometimes you might catch a few still floating around in places. The odd bird here or there. Like that. You can also bring back some of the highlights. I've got some white gouache here on the that I've left previously, so I can just pick up a bit of this white gouache, soften that down a bit as much as I can. And we can use that, draw out a few highlights on the heads of the figures, like this maybe. That. some on the lamps as well, just some just in a few little areas where you want to bring back some little highlights and things. Okay, just try not to overdo it though. Should have a bag or something here. Bit of softness in here. That legs, draw out those legs a bit more. More white. Okay, and I'll call that one finished. If you like this video, check out the playlist on the right. I release new tutorials and art supply reviews each week to help you progress faster in your watercolor journey.